Hi there, it's Jeff here with a market failure revision video looking at public and private goods. So first of all, what do we mean by the concept of public goods? Well, public goods are essentially goods that are provided collectively, often financed collectively by the government. They have certain essential characteristics. First of all, they're non-rival. Consumption of a public good by one person does not reduce the amount or the supply available for somebody else. And also they're non-excludable. Okay, so public goods are non-excludable, meaning that the benefits derived from them cannot be confined solely to those who have paid for it. So non-payers can enjoy the benefits of consumption at no financial cost to themselves. And this gives rise to, or leads to, the free rider problem, which we'll talk about. So loads of examples of pure public goods, things like the sanitation infrastructure that communities use, flood defence projects. Crime control is essentially a public good. So too, the reduced risk of disease from vaccinations, as we saw during the pandemic. Freely available knowledge from online learning is a public good. Public service broadcasting has a strong public good aspect to it. And so too the benefits of irrigation systems, which benefit a whole community. And also things like national parks and natural environment have very strong public good aspects to them. Now, many students often get confused about the definition and the nature of public goods in exams. And too often in exams, students write that public goods are provided by the government as their defining feature. No, provision and finance by the public sector or by the government is usually the solution to missing markets created by public goods, but it's not the nature of a public good. So if you see the phrase public goods in the exam, the first things you should write down are that public goods are essentially non-rival and non-excludable. Now, evaluation point is that public goods can sometimes be quasi-public and can either be non-rival or non-excludable, but not necessarily both. So what are private goods? Now, private goods are excludable. So the seller of a private good can prevent people who are not paid for it from consuming it. So excludability is a really key aspect of private goods. It allows for the enforcement of property rights and the collection of payments, so private goods are provided profitably by the market. Private goods are rival in consumption. So there's competition or rivalry. If I consume something, there's less available for somebody else to consume. And critically, private goods are typically priced in markets based on market demand, market supply. And consumers pay for what they consume. Typically, private firms are their main providers. So be it a private gym or an exclusive club. None of them would have me as a member, by the way. Tickets to an event, exclusive tickets, exclusive restaurants. If I reserve a table on my own in a restaurant, that's one less table for somebody else to eat. So private goods have that key characteristic of excludability, and typically they're also rival in consumption. So why are public goods financed by the government? Well, for the reasons we've just explained. First of all, if you think about non-excludability, collective finance through taxation ensures that everyone, in theory, or taxpayers, contributes to the funding of public goods. And that helps in a way to prevent free riding. It also ensures that the costs are perhaps more equitably distributed across the population. Then we bring in the idea of economies of scale. So if you're providing public goods collectively for a big population, that can bring down the cost per capita. So the tax allows governments to collect money from a broad tax base, and it can often be more cost-effective to provide public goods on a huge scale compared to allowing individual private firms to do the job. And I think the third point is super important: public interest and equity. So taxation to fund public goods allows governments to allocate scarce resources based on social priorities, and critically make sure that public goods are provided in a way that promotes welfare and equity. So accessible public goods, often free at the point of use. Now, public goods are changing, and part of the story is obviously the impact of technological change. Encryption devices, technology allowing electronic road pricing, and the technologies allowing live streaming of events, all that kind of stuff. So advances in technology are blurring the distinction between some public and private goods and services. So obviously with encryption, that allows a supplier to exclude the non-payer, even if the product is essentially non-rival, one of the characteristics of public goods. Technological progress, for example, has cut the cost of smart metering used in road pricing. So that can make roads more of a private good, including roads, bridges and tunnels. And in another way, the open source or Creative Commons movement has made much of digital information public good in nature. So open source courses, for example, massive open online courses or MOOCs, available essentially to all. This information is both non-rival and non-excludable. This is a nice little way of summarising. You might want to press the pause button here and take a screenshot. This is a really good example. So public goods, top right, are both non-excludable and non-rival. So firework displays, flood defence, public service broadcasting available free to view. Private goods, bottom left, rival in consumption, excludable. So the likes of luxury resorts and that kind of thing. Then bottom right, you have common pool resources. Now they are non-excludable, but they can be rival. Okay, so if particularly if you overuse them. So COVID vaccinations, for example, one community getting a vaccine, the benefits are non-excludable, but of course it might deprive some other community of getting vaccines if there's a limited supply capacity. Common land is non-excludable, but again, if you over-consume it, you can denigrate or depreciate the resource, leading to the tragedy of the commons. And then club goods, top left. Now, club goods are non-rival in consumption, but excludable. So if you think about Netflix or your sports subscriptions, Disney Plus, Discovery Plus, that kind of stuff, encrypted digital broadcasting is non-rival. If I've got Netflix on, it doesn't stop my next door neighbour across the road using something else. But they're excludable. You have to pay per view. Gives you the hint there, doesn't it? Now, there's also a concept known as quasi-public goods. So a quasi-public good is a near public good. It has some, but not all of the characteristics of a public good. So they're typically semi-non-rival. So up to a point, if more people use a park or more motorists join a road, it doesn't reduce the space available for others. But beaches become crowded. I've been there. Parks and leisure facilities often crowded at peak times. Open source, open access Wi-Fi networks, as you know, will become crowded, reducing the speed and functionality for other users. And they can be semi-non-excludable. So it's possible, but not difficult or costly, to exclude non-paying customers. You can put a fence around a beach. You can charge an entrance fee, etc. So examples of quasi-public goods: crowded beaches, toll roads and bridges, free Wi-Fi, busy urban parks. They don't fit, so they have some of the characteristics of private and public goods. They don't fit neatly into pure public goods or pure private goods. I did mention at the start of this video the free rider problem. If it's okay with you, let's spend a minute or two on that. Because public goods are non-excludable, it's difficult, often very hard, to charge people for benefiting once something becomes available. And free riders essentially have no incentive to reveal how much they're willing and able to pay for something. Now, if the free rider is prevalent and dominant, that can lead to the under-provision or the non-provision of a essential service. If enough people are taking a free ride, you're not generating the revenues to pay for something. And obviously that causes market failure. So pure public goods in the free rider can lead to missing markets. So accessing open spaces, fare dodging on transport systems, fly tipping is a good example of free rider, obviously with externalities. Illegal downloading and sharing, tax evasion, free piggybacking on other people's networks and things. Free rider is a ubiquitous issue. How do we overcome it? Well, compulsory taxation is one way to fund the collective provision of services. People often appealing to people's altruism and sense of social purpose. Community solutions, for example, establishing strong social norms to manage common pool resources such as fishing grounds and grazing land. And I do recommend the work there of the late Eleanor Ostrom, who did some amazing work on overcoming the tragedy of the commons. And critically, the government has a role maybe in terms of legislation. So using regulations that are enforceable in law, fishing quotas, copyright and patent laws, etc., to prevent free riding on IP. Here's a little unbalanced activity. You might want to press the pause button here. Give one argument for and one argument against state provision of a public good. Well, in terms of arguments for, government provision may become more efficient because of economies of scale, and state provision governments providing it may help prevent underprovision and underconsumption so that social welfare is improved. If you think about the public good nature of libraries and who knows, vaccinations, there's clearly positive externalities. Whereas on the other hand, on balance, public-private provision brings in profit-maximising aspect that may not maximise public welfare. So junk food served in schools. And if the government becomes a monopoly provider, again, there's a danger of a loss of efficiency arising from a lack of competition. There we go. That was a revision video on public goods. I hope you found it useful. More revision videos as we head towards the exams. Thanks for joining in. Stay safe, stay curious, stay happy, stay positive, and see you sometime soon.